Happy Saturday, guys. Good morning, good early morning, and good evening, guys. I'm very happy to see that yet again, month on month, each and every one of you joins this virtual event on a weekend, which is very important, right? So, thanks for joining. This boosts my morale and motivates me to keep coming every month with new topics. And this time, it is even special because we have our guest speaker, Dan, right? So I'll not take much time because it's not me talking today, it's Dan talking today. So today, here is our agenda. Let's talk about agenda, a small introduction about me. And no, we are not going to talk about latest Apple updates today. And we are not going to talk about latest Jamp updates today. It's because our guest speaker is from Ohio and it's already around 12:45 a.m. at his place. So I'm thankful to Dan to show up for our event in India time zone, which is not easy. Not everyone can do this. So this month event, rather than I will say it's a special event which is focused on set up your Mac, which can give you a great Mac OS onboarding experience. I still remember many of you had pinged me and asked me that there has to be one session on this topic. And here we go. We have set up your Mac by none other than the creator, Dan K. Snelson. Okay. A little info about me. My name is Salim Ukani, and people also know me about by name Samstar 777. I have over 15 plus years of experience both in Mac and Windows platform. I am Jam 200, 300, 370, and 400 certified. I love to help people, and hence I created India's Mac admin, which is now known as India's Apple admin. And I'm really proud to say that we are the first community which are flash on Jamp Nation, right? And if you see that small QR code on the top left corner, if you scan that code, it will take you to directly my LinkedIn profile. You can follow me for latest update on Jamp on Apple, right? Enough of me talking. I will hand it over to our guest speaker, Dan K. Slanson, to unleash, set up your Mac and show us how we can simply streamify our Mac workflow. Over to you, Dan, that we stop sharing.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to see my screen?
Let
yes.
me get.
Yeah, we got it.
All right. I'm actually going to stop my video in Zoom. Okay. Well, greetings from Columbus, Ohio. My name is Dan Snelson, and I am a senior system engineer with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are sometimes called Mormons because of our belief in a volume of companion scripture to the Holy Bible called the Book of Mormon. Let's talk about jumpstarting your user's onboarding experience with Set Up Your Mac Helper. Here's our agenda. We'll first level set by talking about Swift Dialog, Set Up Your Mac, and Set Up Your Mac Helper. We'll spend the bulk of our time together demonstrating how Set Up Your Mac Helper can jumpstart your user's onboarding experience. I'll then highlight areas where you should expect to hand code to apply your organization's specific racing stripes. We'll finish up with how you can contribute and where you can find support, and I'll try to answer any questions. Additionally, at the end of many slides, I'll pause for questions about that slide, so you don't have to try to remember your questions throughout the entire presentation. And if you can enter your questions in the chat, we'll take a look at them. First, let's level set with a few about slides. None of this would be possible without BART and Swift Dialog. Bart Reardon has provided the Mac admin community Swift Dialog, an open source utility written in Swift UI which requires macOS Monterey 12 or later, that displays a pop-up dialog, which can include content-rich messages for your users. While Bart is fond of saying that Swift Dialog itself has no brains, Swift Dialog can return various values from user input on which your script can act and continue processing. The project is available on GitHub, and Bart has an extensive wiki with detailed examples. Additionally, there's built-in help when you need a quick answer. Here's the QR code from Bart's session from last year. Are there any general questions about Swift Dialog? Set Up Your Mac is a 3,000 plus line bash script, which was originally inspired by Adam's code and then James's code, on which it still relies. Some recent heavy lifting has been provided by Bart himself, for which I'm personally grateful. The latest blog post can always be found at the displayed URL or the QR code, and is probably the best place to get started. Let's look at a demo. Here's a demo of automated device enrollment and Set Up Your Mac being executed via self-service, which we call the Workforce App Store. While we prompt users to initiate Set Up Your Mac via self-service, you can have Set Up Your Mac execute automatically immediately after enrollment. The blog post referenced earlier includes a link to Rob's site where you can learn how to leverage a pre-stage enrollment package. And I think Rob is scheduled for next month, actually. Set Up Your Mac Helper makes it a breeze to customize which fields initially display, so you can prompt users for the exact information. And users are presented with an estimated duration of the entire process based on their current internet connection. And users can see detailed information on the progress of application installations, including if there are any failures. Any general questions about Set Up Your Mac?
Dan, if an application fails over here, is there a way to again reinstall it from here itself?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
If an app fails to install, or if a policy fails to install in the Set Up Your Mac screen, is there a way to reinitiate it from then and there?
Not currently.
Okay.
So our approach is if a policy fails, the computer would not be what we call Jamf Pro compliant. And then after they reboot and log in, that would be the only policy they would see so that their computer becomes compliant. So let's say, for example, your security software failed to install during Set Up Your Mac. The computer would not be compliant, and so when they logged into self-service, they would see the policy to make it compliant. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Any other general questions about Set Up Your Mac?
Then I have one question.
Please.
I have gone through Set Up Your Mac, and maybe I have not complete my entire study around this solution. The question is there a possibility that we can also bring configuration profile to this area, because we need a certificate at a particular state during enrollment, not before, not after. So is there part of this set up your Mac, or this is something we should call out as a feature request?
So you're trying to have a configuration profile be installed?
Yes.
So I think what other admins are doing is they're putting a recon step at the very beginning and at the very end.
Okay.
So if you would leave a breadcrumb at the beginning and then do a recon, and then based upon the smart group membership, the configuration profile could be installed. But currently, the way it's designed is just window dressing to run your Jamf Pro policies.
Got it.
But you're welcome to put a feature request in too, if you like.
Sure. I'll do that. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other general questions about set up your Mac?
Hi,
Uh,
Dan. Money here. So, Dan, this is regarding that. Is there any automation like bring that user information from the starting screen, like username and department? So, do we have any certain automation?
So in our environment, we are hosted on-prem, and we have our Jamf Pro server talking to our on-prem enterprise Active Directory. And so we only prompt for asset tag. During enrollment, we authenticate with Okta, and then we know who the user is. And so we're automating that direction where we have an LDAP server configured. So I think that might be more of a Jamf Pro server environment question rather than set up your Mac.
Understood, Jan. Yeah.
And then in the chat for the meeting, I put several links. One of them is for the Slack channel. So if you think of a question later and do it. Okay, any other general questions?
Oh, Dan, what are the benefits of using Setup Your Mac? Because I think recently Jamf also has included self-service onboarding for macOS.
I actually have a slide about that question at the end.
Oh.
Okay, very good. So Leslie has outdone himself yet again with Set Up Your Mac Helper. Set Up Your Mac Helper is a standalone macOS app which makes the always tedious work of building your custom policy JSON an absolute delight. But Leslie didn't stop there. Many variables, but not all, can be modified or toggled in Set Up Your Mac Helper. My site is probably the best place to get started with Set Up Your Mac Helper. Let's look at a number of demos for jumpstarting your user's onboarding experience with Set Up Your Mac Helper. So now for the fun part. But as always, before we can have any fun, we need to do a little work. Each Jamf Pro policy you wish to execute with Set Up Your Mac needs to first have a custom trigger. Take some time on a naming convention and use it consistently. Whomever follows you when you land your next big gig will be glad you did. Next, please be aware that Set Up Your Mac Helper leverages a few fields from a policy's self-service tab, even if the policy is disabled from being displayed in self-service. Finally, my personal recommendation is that you have dedicated enrollment policies. A number of Mac admins have recently reported issues with their customized Set Up Your Mac script going sideways, and the root cause was too many racing stripes in the policies which were being executed by Set Up Your Mac. Let's take a look at a demo of the Jamf Pro Policy pre-work. Here's a demo of the Jamf Pro Policy pre-work you'll need to complete before launching Set Up Your Mac Helper for the first time. So we have a custom event defined, and even if self-service is disabled, we're still going to pull the display name, the description, and the icon. And you'll notice I'll hit cancel here. So let's look at a couple of more. So here's an enrollment-specific policy for Chrome. We have a custom trigger. It's not available in self-service, but we have populated the display name, the description, and the icon. So those were a couple install-meter policies. Here's another Rosetta policy that just runs a script. And again, we've disabled self-service, but we still have populated the display name, the description, and the icon. So that was a demo of the Jamf Pro Policy pre-work you'll need to complete before launching Set Up Your Mac Helper for the first time. Any questions about the pre-work you'll have to do before launching Set Up Your Mac Helper?
Dan, you said that we have to populate the details even if that application, the policy is not available in the self-service. We just have to add the name and icon and other details there. That policy should be enabled, or if it, even if it is in disabled state, we can reuse it later.
So all of our policies that we use with Set Up Your Mac are enrollment specific. And so I don't try to reuse them for anything else.
Okay.
And they're not available in self-service, but I have populated the name and the description and the icon.
Okay, but can we still use it in self-service at a later point of time, like after the enrollment?
You could, and you'll probably run into problems.
Okay,
So I would recommend you have dedicated enrollment policies.
got it.
Good question. So as just one example of how Leslie outdid himself with Set Up Your Mac Helper, one of my favorite features is the ability to specify a script source. So let's take a look at a demo. We'll launch Set Up Your Mac Helper. And we'll log in. We'll click the settings icon in the bottom left-hand corner to quickly access the default source, which is the main branch. In a recent edition, Leslie added an icon to both easily see which script version you're using and to display the raw script in your default browser with a single click. So let's change the default branch, in this case 1.13.1. So that was a demo of specifying the script source in Set Up Your Mac Helper. If you have your own fork of Set Up Your Mac, you may wish to try specifying it in Set Up Your Mac Helper. Any questions about script source in Set Up Your Mac Helper?
Not a question, but a comment that this is really a great work, because many of us is, it is very difficult to go to GitHub, find out the right source every time. From going to GitHub, looking for everything, it is always easy to go to a helper, change the setting, change it to main, which will always give you a production release which is out there. So it's a great work.
All right, let's quickly review the remaining settings. We'll launch Set Up Your Mac Helper. And log in. We'll click the settings icon in the bottom left-hand corner. Populating your customized list of buildings and departments is just a click away. Any questions about settings and set up your Mac helper?
Then I guess if you are providing the links to the images, I think it would also help us if we can directly upload the image and then somewhere internally and take that. Because when I tried it with the SharePoint or something, I think the links were not working. Only in the GitHub source it was taking it. Is there any other way we can kind of share those company related images internally and put that link?
Are you saying the links in the chat did not work?
No, in the settings we have this branding, right? The branding icons.
Oh, the
previous slide which you showed, no? It had a URL for the branding icons and stuff like that. So
Yeah, so just to summarize the question, basically in SYM-Helper, we have a tab for branding and it has a URL for source. It's basically an internet facing website. So the question is, can we share these branding images internally somewhere and give that internal path rather than giving an GitHub page path or the internet freepik.com path?
Yes, you can put a local file path there. If you want to use local assets, you can put a local file path there.
I guess, Anil, it all depends on your organization, because whatever site, the SharePoint site, it might not be internet facing site. It might not be accessible from internet. It be accessible only on your intranet. So you need to use might be in your organization, you have some brandings, just check with the communication team. There might be some sites just accessible over internet. If you keep it over there, then you can able to access it. But if you keep it in a SharePoint, so whenever you're running the SYM, it might not be able to reach out to your intranet sites. So that's why you're not getting those branding images. So it should be internet facing one.
Yeah, that's my question. What if our marketing team does not allow us to share those?
Then you need to find that if it doesn't allow to share, then I think we cannot help, right? So you need to find some way it should be facing internet, so that when you're running the Mac for the first time, enrolling a Mac for the first time, you would be in internet, right? So once your enrollment is completed, then you will have all those softwares installed, like VPNs or some other software. Then you can able to access your intranet, right? So it is you need to have something over internet, so you can able to fetch those branding, or you can use your own, get permission from your team, marketing team, create your own GitHub page and store those, because there are some images will be publicly available from your organization. You can use those images, so it won't have any issues.
Okay.
So I have the same issues, right? So I have the same issues, right? So I'm not in SYM. I'm using Octave. When I have same issues, when I'm trying to use some images or videos, I'm not able to do it. Then I gone with the images which is publicly available for my organization, which is available in YouTube and which is available in the public facing internet sites. I use those URLs and then it is working fine. So it is, yeah.
Yeah, great discussion. Let's look at a demo of building a default configuration, which is required before being able to generate a customized set up your Mac script. We'll start by reviewing the blog post. And then launch Set Up Your Mac Helper and log in. We've already completed our Jampro policy pre-work and have dedicated enrollment policies, so let's filter on enrollment. You can easily add policies from the left column to the selected configuration by double-clicking. Click the plus button to add a validation. Multiple triggers can be displayed to the user as a single item by first selecting them, then clicking Group. Next, we'll add a local validation of File Vault. While the validation for File Vault is built in to set up your Mac, you'll still need to actually enable File Vault via Jamf Pro. We're using a configuration profile as part of our pre-stage. You'll always want to end with the local validation of recon, and also specify the command of recon to update your Jamf Pro server for the newly enrolled Mac. Let's copy pasta data from our self-service update inventory policy. Next, we'll click Generate Script, save the file to the desktop. And in a previously elevated terminals window on an enrolled Mac, we'll execute the script. Okay, the so-called welcome script looked good, but I don't want to continue filling out all these fields for the rest of the demos. So let's turn off most of the fields and set up your Mac helper. We'll click Generate Script and replace our previous script, save, and rerun. Nice. Now we only have to enter asset tag. Okay, this is working, but it's not doing too much. Let's add some more policies and set up your Mac helper. Add policies from the left column to the selected configuration by double-clicking, and you can drag and drop to reorder. New in version 1.14.0, you can specify an app or a complete file path. We're using a remote validation to confirm that Sophos endpoint services are running, so we manually entered remote. And we repeat it for Global Protect. After double checking our work, we'll click Generate Script. We'll save it to the desktop. And here's our elevated terminal window. Hey, this is looking good. Any questions about defining your default configuration and set up your Mac helper?
Yes, Dan, I have one question from here. So do we have any option to add this App Store applications? I mean that we have a GMF built-in applications, right? Catalogs. So is that possible to add it here?
So set up your Mac helper is just, well, and so we'll set up your Mac is just window dressing for Jamf Pro policies. So if you can execute a policy through the Jamf binary, you can put it in set up your Mac. So that might be a roundabout way of answering it, but currently you can't install Mac App Store apps through a policy?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions about the default configuration?
One question, Dan.
Please.
During the options where you were unchecking users' information for the demo purpose, there was one key called move to production. What is that key for?
Movable in production. So we do a full screen experience when you launch Setup Your Mac so that it prevents the user from accessing the desktop. If you would like, and so the window is centered and not movable. If you would like it to be movable in production, you would enable that setting. And it won't be full screen, and then the user can interact with the window.
Got
Good
it.
question.
Thank you.
Good question. So let's look at a demo of building the so-called complete configuration. We'll start by reviewing the blog post. And then launch Setup Your Mac Helper and log in. Our previous work on the default configuration is here, so let's use it to build what we refer to as our complete configuration. We'll grab the variable name for the third configuration and then clone the existing default configuration. You'll make it easy on yourself if you use these exact variable names when naming your configurations and Setup Your Mac Helper. We'll add policies from the left column to our complete configuration by double-clicking and then dragging and dropping to change the order. Now here's a pro tip. I have found it easiest to build and test my customized Setup Your Mac script by running Setup Your Mac Helper on a fully enrolled, fully configured Mac. Oh, it looks like I forgot to group these two Office items. We'll generate the script. And in our previously elevated terminal session, so this time I'll choose complete. Nice, this is looking good. Any questions about defining your complete configuration and Setup Your Mac Helper?
Dan, I got a question regarding that remote validation. What are we exactly trying to do with the application and remote validations?
So a remote validation answers the question, I can see that the app is installed, but is it running? So for example, you could install security software, and that's all well and good, but are its services running? And so I have a dedicated post on remote validations that I'll put in the chat here at the end. So for example, in the case of Office, you could check a single app, and we check for Outlook, but wouldn't it be nice to check if all of the Office suite is installed? So that's what remote validations do.
Okay. And are we not going to restart the device whether if the applications is not running?
Right. And so for example, if you probably have an extension attribute already to determine the health of your security software. So effectively what you're doing is you're repurposing that extension attribute as a script. You're adding that script to a policy. So you would install, for example, Sophos endpoint, and then you would effectively run the extension attribute to validate that Sophos endpoint is healthy. And so that's what a remote validation does.
Yeah.
Remote as opposed to locally built into set up your Mac. So there's a local validation for file vault, which you can leverage, but that's local to the script. And so remote means you're executing a Jamf Pro policy.
Yeah, got you.
Excellent question.
Thank you.
So here's our last demo. This time we'll build the remaining configurations. We'll again start by reviewing the blog post. And we'll launch Set Up Your Mac Helper and logged in. Let's use the so-called complete configuration to build what we refer to as our recommended configuration. But before we do, let's again copy pasta the variable name for the second configuration. This time we'll remove policies from the right column by double-clicking. Wow, that was easy. We'll check our work in a previously elevated terminal window. This time we'll choose recommended. Okay, this is looking good. Let's repeat the process for the required configuration. And we'll again remove policies by double-clicking. Generate the script. And now we'll do the required. Okay, this is looking good. Any questions about defining our last two configurations and Set Up Your Mac Helper?
Dan, if I understand this correctly, you have created 3 set of configurations, right? One with very default, custom, and then the recommended. In all these 3, you have created 3 more set of configurations each to have this added in the script, isn't it?
So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? All 3 configurations?
So all 3 configurations has been defined like a pre-stage kind of thing. 1, 2, 3 configurations, and each configurations has 3 set of sub configurations, isn't it? Like configuration 1, configuration 2, configuration 3.
Yes. And I'm sorry. Yes, so there's 3 technically there's 4 configurations. There is a default. So for example, if you only have a single configuration, everybody gets the exact same item. You can turn off prompt for configuration because there's only one. And so you'll just define the default.
Yeah, got it.
And then in our case, we're worldwide. And so with dynamic download estimates, we let the end users decide how much time they want to take. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, now for the detailed work. While the current version of Set Up Your Mac Helper handles much of the heavy lifting, it hasn't yet replaced your preferred code editor. Specifically, when testing locally via terminal, you'll need to manually change the defaults for the various script parameters like debug mode. New in version 1.13.0 is the Armin-inspired Set Up Your Mac Helper comment, which will hopefully tell you which settings you can and can't yet modify and Set Up Your Mac Helper. Last on this list, which is by no means comprehensive, is configuration variables. Unless you like the 3 names we're using, you'll want to make some modifications here too. Any questions on the hand coding requirements? Each of you is invited to contribute. And the Mac Admin Slack has a dedicated channel for conversation and best effort support of Mac admins leveraging Set Up Your Mac. Well, if it's okay, I would like to ask the first question. How does Set Up Your Mac compare to Jamf Pro's new macOS onboarding? Let's look at several features of both Set Up Your Mac and macOS onboarding. Distribution and support are probably the key differences. And for some of you, that's where this comparison ends. I get it. Your organization requires commercially produced, vendor-supported solutions. But for the rest of us, please be aware that macOS onboarding was introduced in Jamf Pro 11.1. So if you're running an earlier version, you'll need to first upgrade. If features like a branded customizable interface, full screen experience, or capturing user input are important to your workflow, you may wish to open a Jamf Pro feature request. You'll want to carefully review Jamf's documentation about which computers will be affected. Likewise, about your options to initiate the workflow and which policies can be included. Here's a biggie. You may not want to spend your time hand coding, and you might not even have a preferred code editor. I also get that. Last but certainly not least is the engine on which these two options run. I'm happy to answer any questions about Set Up Your Mac features, and I will refer you to Jamf's documentation or your Jamf contacts for questions about macOS onboarding. Well, thanks for watching. You're welcome to join us on the Mac Admin Slack, the Set Up Your Mac channel.